Makhtar Diop is an economist who has dedicated his life to national and international public service in addition to having a diverse private sector experience. He is currently the World Bank Africa Region Vice President, a position he has held for 6 years. Prior to his career with the World Bank and IMF, he served as the Minister of Economy and Finance of Senegal. In 2017, Makhtar Diop, a recognized opinion leader in the economic and social development field, was named one of the 100 most influential Africans in the world. In March 2017, he received the prestigious Regents Lectureship Award from the University of California, Berkeley.
Welcome to the Africa Leadership Dialogues as we focus on development, leadership, governance and growth on the African continent. We're delighted to have with us the African Regional Vice President of the World Bank, Makhtar Diop. It's a pleasure, as always.
It's a pleasure, Julie, to be with you.
Thank you so much. We've had interesting conversations over many years. But this year, it's been fascinating to watch the movement in Africa. We just had the push for the Continental Free Trade Area a few weeks ago in Kigali. There's a lot of political will, it seems, to start doing things that weren't done before, to focus a little bit more on trade and development. Do you feel that there's something happening when you look at Africa? What are you thinking?
You know, Judy, we've been talking about it for all these years. If you remember, our conversation were about transformation of Africa, structural transformation. You have a report coming out of it, private sector involvement in African development. And I think all that is coming together now. All that is coming together. And if you think about even the latest initiative on African trade, we had a private sector component in it. You had a Mongol of African industry who were there to advise government on how to do it better. I just came back yesterday from Kigali, and I had the opportunity to meet with His Excellency President Kagame, who is the chairman of African Union. And all the discussion was about how we can accelerate the process of regional integration using the will, the political will that has been demonstrated recently with the signing of this agreement, and try to take concrete action which makes really that a reality. And we exchange around a couple of issues. For instance, electricity. Yeah. We have today a power pools which have been built in Africa. The bank contributed to it. We have now a lot of interconnection between countries. In East Africa is happening between Ethiopia, Tanzania, Kenya. And actually, now we don't have anymore a big problem about electricity generation. Now is to distribute it. Right. So one of the things that you could do, for instance, to accelerate integration is to ensure that the market functions well. So you can import electricity from a neighboring country without worrying that you will be paid. And when you need it also to import electricity, not to worry that people will deliver that electricity. So we can talk about it later, but we have a few ideas and a few sectors where we can really accelerate that process.
So it's moving and it's happening. Yeah. And I want to talk about East Africa for a moment before we go into strategic interventions for development. What's the state of play right now economically? What are you seeing in East Africa?
What you see in Africa is a bit, you see more resilience than other part of Africa, particularly in the large country in East Africa. Kenya and Tanzania have been having showing more resilience than the rest of the continent, particularly oil exporter countries, which have been really hit by the slowdown in oil prices. So this is good news. It means that there is more diversification. There is a little bit less dependency on commodities, and a country can have a counter-cyclical growth, which is not always linked to the commodity price cycle. So that's good news. Mm-hmm. In Kenya, in spite of a year where you had drought, you had political processes which are a bit complicated, in spite of it, you came out with a growth level which was relatively high. So that shows that there is a lot of resilience, and I think that's what I'm taking out now from East Africa. The word is resilience.
That's powerful, and that's optimistic. And hopefully we're going to move forward in a way that really transforms the opportunities now that are presented before us. And I want to tap into that now through the project that you've just actually launched in Kenya, the North and Northeastern Development Initiative, which is touching on 10 counties, largely seen as the most marginalized over the past few decades. Tell us a little bit about that, the interventions that you are making and the opportunities that those interventions will unleash.
Why is it initiative and not just a sum of projects? What we learn about development is that spatial development matter. And you don't just bring one input. You don't bring electricity and forget the rest. Mm-hmm. You need to bring electricity, social services, education, water, clean water. And that's a bundle which really makes a difference in a space. And I think we learn it over time. And that's why the team here is our director, Gichuru, and the team work around an initiative. And the process was particularly interesting because it was a process whereby the president, last time I was here a year ago, told me, Makhtar, we need to do something special for those areas where the human development indicator are the lowest in Kenya. We have a literacy of women which are half of the average in Kenya, 44% of women. We have access to medical services for women, maternal and prenatal, which are very low. So all this needs to be taken care of. And in the discussion with the head of state himself came with the idea of saying, I would like to see something which is more holistic than what we usually do. So we started working around a few projects which we believe are bringing things together. A road, connecting those markets to the rest of the economy. Right. So Isiolo, Mandela, a road, when I lived in Kenya 15 years ago, I used to go in that area, and it was not an easy road to ride.
That's an understatement, right?
It was not an easy road to ride.
It was a nightmare.
It was a nightmare. I would not say that, but it was not that an easy ride. And so we will be helping building 200 kilometers in that area. Second thing is water. Water is important. Let's not forget that 70% of the livestock of Kenya is coming from the northern part of Kenya. Energy, electricity. Without electricity, we know that a lot of things cannot be done. Third, have social protection services, so that we can really target the poorest in those areas and transfer to them resources which help them really face all these shocks that they are facing when there are climate change consequences. So that's what we are doing, and we're doing it also thinking about the refugees, because the refugees for the government of Kenya is not a burden. They are really seeing it also as an opportunity to develop economically a part of the country and to play the role that Kenya has always been playing in the region, which is a host country which accommodate a population which are very much in need.
So I'll come back to refugees in just a moment. But so this is about an ecosystem. Not working in one space, but ensuring that you're creating an ecosystem that enables transformation to happen. This partnership between the government and the World Bank is critical, but I'll ask this now. What about other players? How should the private sector be involved? What would you say to them?
It's interesting, because when we talk about private sector, when I say livestock, people don't think private sector, but it is exactly the private sector. Okay. And it's the conversation that often I would like us to have. When we think about African indigenous private sector, the one which will be creating jobs is as family business, small businesses. So we need to create conditions for them to improve their productivity. Mm-hmm. And the investment of livestock will be purely something will be supporting the private sector. Access to electricity. We didn't have a project where the government comes and connect everybody for free. We said, in an area like that, where it's very difficult sometimes to have a connection, what is the most economical way of doing it? So we went for solar energy, and we discussed with our private sector branch, which is IFC, and they will be supporting the private sector to provide those solar panels for those in northern Kenya, so people can have access to that. Third, we are with the social protection program, what we want to do is to avoid that people lose their minimum assets that are accumulated over time. What we saw is that small families, small business accumulate some assets, and when there is a drought or a flood, they lose everything and they have to start from scratch.
Right.
So these social protection programs are really helping them to protect those assets and to be able to be resilient. We're doing that also by supporting the government at the macro level. We have prepared what we call a CAT DDO. In our jargon, it means what? It means that often when there is a flood, like the one we are seeing now, or a drought, a government has to reorganize the budget, has to take a lot of very important measures on the budget to be able to face that emergency. So now we have this facility whereby we have defined already all the conditions, and if the macroeconomic situation is correct in a country, we can basically disburse the day after the government declare a situation of emergency and so forth. So that will help at the macro level to support the specific efforts that we are trying to put in place in the north.
That's absolutely fascinating. So, I mean, the message there is when it comes to perception, shift perception, those pastoralists are actually private sector, absolutely. Those livestock owners, so very critical. On refugees, there's the thinking now around how do we empower refugee communities, give them the dignity to become part and parcel of productivity alongside host communities. How important is that?
My first message is Africa can teach the rest of the world.
Okay.
If you look at our conditions, there are not a lot of countries in the world which have been for such a long time receiving refugees communities. Kenya have done that for more than 20 years. When you go to Dadaab, you have kids who are born there, who are now adults, and they themselves have children. And our countries have done it quietly. If you look at internal displaced people, in our countries, we see a lot of people being displaced. And I think Africa hasn't been given enough credit for what you have done. So one of my first message is Africa should really, the rest of the world should really recognize the efforts that we made. And the last big conference on refugees, African leaders have drawn the attention of the international community on this particular fact. Now, secondly, what is interesting on the refugee issue is that it's also a source of economic growth in an area, because services are to be provided, people have shops, people are buying goods and selling them, and in the refugee camp, people are developing some economic activities. I was yesterday with one of our colleagues who was working on the refugee camps, and she was very proud on showing me a bag and says, this bag, I bought it in the refugee camp, and this beautiful bag has been made there. So they are also generating something which can help creating more income. So that's what I think that we are trying to do. But it has also a cost on the receiving country, the host country.
Right.
That's why it was very important for the World Bank to take that into account and to have a special window that help countries which have been so generous in receiving a large group of refugees to be able to be helped to sustain that effort. And that's what we are doing with this particular initiative.
That's excellent. We're going to be talking more about refugees and the opportunities once we look at refugee camps or refugee areas as markets and start to move them, hopefully, towards settlements. I think there's policy change also happening alongside that. Looking at NEDI now and this huge investment into this project, I think it's 20% of the World Bank's budget is going into this initiative.
Absolutely.
What is your vision of transformation? What do you hope to see happen?
What we learned in this recent, what is this situation of Boko Haram in Nigeria, the situation in northern Mali, what it taught us is that we cannot think about development in a country looking only at averages. We need to look at also the special dimension of growth. And when you think about it, it's not by chance that Europe, as it was becoming much more of economic entities, spent a lot of money to make sure that the part of Europe which were less developed receive additional resources so they can converge and have an entity which is a bit more homogeneous in terms of economic and social development. So you will see in Europe, some part of Europe which had a life expectancy which were much lower, quickly increasing with that growth. We see a fertility rate going down in countries which are much higher fertility rates. So other elements which are showing. So what we are learning is that if we want to have an inclusive growth, and we will want to have a growth which is socially acceptable and socially inclusive, we need to work on areas in regions which are much less advanced. Mm-hmm. And the experience that we're having now in NEDI, that's what we would like also to transfer in other countries which are facing a little bit this divide of dry regions, less endowed with natural resources, right, and ensure that they converge in terms of growth, in terms of human indicator with the rest of the country. On the structural transformation of the continent, it's interesting to think about what we can do in terms of leapfrogging. Today, artificial intelligence is not anymore something that is discussed in a lab by specialists. It's becoming part of the production in a lot of European countries. So it's important that we start thinking about using everything that is coming now in terms of technological change to be able to accelerate the transformation of our economies and to be much less dependent or solely dependent on commodities. So that's why the World Bank and the president of the World Bank have launched a very important project, which is called the Human Capital Project, right, and which will be, in a sense, ranking countries in terms of human capital development, and not to shame anybody, just to say we have to work to be done, and for country will be a little bit lagging, we are preparing packages because this real transformation of the economy will occur only if we invest heavily in human capital, science, and technology.
That's fantastic. It brings me to my next question. Across Africa, but also largely in these areas where NEDI is going to be operating, these 10 counties, women have very few opportunities. It's a difficult environment. Also, young people, face unique challenges. What are your thoughts on how all the players can ensure that women and young people are able to leverage the benefits of the transformation that's been brought in?
Is there something that keeps me awake at night? This is exactly these two issues that you mentioned. Okay. Because it touches at many components. One is all the economic incentives that we can put in place to empower people to increase their income, but also it touches on social norms. And social norms take a bit more time to change. They change sometimes fast, but sometimes they can take time to change. And I think we need to work on both. What we're learning more and more in development is that those development specialists or professionals like us were focusing more on the economic side, the income side, generation side, maybe didn't spend enough time of understanding what was the social norms and how there is an interaction between the social norms and the income generation and the empowerment of those groups. So this is something that we're doing more and more. So that's why when you see us talking about sports, it's because we like sports, but also it's because it's a medium of bringing the youth around the theme and having conversation about other things. Right. What has been missing first is that we don't listen to the youth. We talk to the youth. It's very...
we talk at the youth.
At the youth, sorry, for my English.
No. But the difference, yes.
And
yes.
We're not listening to them.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, how many times you see a big conference about the youth, and you see only people of my age talking about it. Right. And you ask, where are the youth? So I think that's what you did. You've been doing a great job, Julie, with Jared too, with the bloggers, with all these kids' ideas to give them a voice. But we need to structure it even more, to give them more voice. One of the things that I'm trying to discuss with the leaders is it is a regional meetings of leaders, the RECs, the regional economic community meetings. Can we bring the private sector, some young people, and say, what are your problems? What can we do together to address it? So that part will be very, very, very important. But investing for both women and men in education will be important, very, very important. If you take some some country like Nigeria, where we see in some part of Nigeria a lot of women entrepreneurs, really energetic and moving. One of the big difference is education. Right. One of the big differences is education. And I think that's some things that we need really to emphasize, but also to find some particular instruments to help them economically. Not help them, just to give them the same opportunity as opportunity which are offered to the men. Opportunity of land ownership, opportunity to access to credit, opportunity to be able to access the formal labor market and not to be confined to domestic work. So there is something to be done in that area.
And that opportunity is simply equity. It's simply equality. That's so. Thank you for that, and you're so passionate about it. That is appreciated. The reference Makhtar Diop made was to Blog for Development. The details are on the screen right now. If you want to learn more about that, go and have a look online. Makhtar, as we come close to the end of this interview, I want you to paint a picture of the Africa that you want to see, and tell us what 3 things our leaders need to focus on to get us there.
It would be a bit pretentious for me to tell leaders what they have to do, but let me tell you what I think that can be done. Mm-hmm. I think to be very pragmatic and very. You are giving an example of your friend, and you say that what impressed you in her is that she's a doer. She makes things happen. Right. And that's things that we need to have collectively, to be able to have targets, to meet those targets, and to deliver and to be accountable to our population. Right. I think that's very, very, very important. If you are not able to do that, we will not be able to. Secondly,
So act.
Act, just to do it, like they say in one ad. Let's do it, yes. and reduce the talk. Okay. Mm-hmm. Second, understanding also that things sometimes take time, and not to change the course. To have and I think if you look at a country like China, this is one of the characteristics in China. Mm-hmm. There is a very clear vision and a focus on reaching those goals. And I think that sometimes in Africa we are making one step forward, 2 steps backward, and things. And I think that is our responsibility. So there is for us to take responsibility of our future. And this is not the outside world will do it for us. We have to do it. Mm-hmm. If we collectively think that it's important to do something, we can do it. But to be able to do that, we need to be accountable, particularly at the leadership level. Right. You cannot ask people to make sacrifices. You cannot ask people to be focused on the long run if they don't see the same happening from the leadership. So that collective approach, that social contract that needs to be built on a trust. And it's a little bit what our parents have done for independence. They have a goal, they have a sense of purpose, and they were mobilized around that, and they reached that goal, which was not an easy goal, which was independence. So that's something similar that we need to have in our country. The third thing is to understand that the world is moving fast. The world is moving fast. So complaining about what was right, what was not right.
You're going to get left behind.
Exactly. If the world isn't fair, so what? Let's deal with that. And there is enough ingenuity, if there is enough creativity in our youth. We as a continent, we have one thing which is the most important, which is youth. There is energy, there is natural resources, there is creativity, and we just have to, together, find a sense of purpose to be able to do that.
Wow.
And how it will be reflected is the day that you show your Kenyan passport, your Senegalese passport, or your Togolese passport, or Central African passport to anybody in the world. It has the same value as a passport of any other country.
Yes, and we will get there. And we will get there. We are getting there. So act, be accountable, and also, know that the world is moving fast. So stop sitting around, procrastinating, complaining, plan, strategize, and move. Makhtar, I want to ask you to look into the camera. And please just deliver a message to Africans watching this show. Many of them watch for knowledge, for inspiration. What would you say to them?
We are very powerful in Africa. We are very strong. We are very resourceful. If we just get our act together, we are accountable to each other, and we understand that we take inspiration for the fathers will bring independence to our country, to our continent, we will be able to be a great continent, a great nation economically. We have so much to offer, and a lot of things are already happening. Let's listen to what is happening in our countries and just make sure that everybody knows about the good things which are happening right now.
We have so much to offer. Let's notice it. Let's let people know. Let's get involved. Thank you so much, Makhtar.
Thank you so much, Julie.
Absolute pleasure.
Pleasure.
Thank you. I hope you've been inspired by the insights, the passion, and the energy of Makhtar Diop. Right now, let's go to our words of wisdom, our African proverb this week. If you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Blessings to you and blessings.